Built like many a 70s horror movie, NeverDead is one of those games that's been created around one hugely grabbing idea. In this case, that would be that the main protagonist, Bryce, whom you take control of, being immortal, and therefore cannot in the conventional sense of the word die. He instead, after withstanding a certain degree of damage, becomes dismembered, at which point the player must either roll around reassembling his limbs, or gain enough energy to regenerate them. It's an irrefutably intriguing concept at the heart of NeverDead, but not one that ever really comes full circle. For someone with such an endearing and interesting trait, Bryce is a character that's surprisingly hard to engage with. Even if you can get past him being a walking cliché who drinks, smokes, and is a bit of a misogynist, the unfunny puns he constantly spews out are difficult to sit through. With regular cutscenes interspersed, NeverDead is intended to be a story-driven experience exploring the hero's origins and his ongoing grudge against a legion of demons, but whatever narrative elements given are largely a challenge to care for. The writing is comparable to that of a failing comic book series, terrible dialogue intact. The title's campaign trails you through a succession of uninspired settings, such as an abandoned mental hospital, the city sewers, and of course some rough backstreets, with a core level design that is, problematically, almost never changed. As Demon Hunter Bryce, you must make your way through these various locales by tackling hordes of enemies, with the occasional puzzle and boss encounter. NeverDead is a hack and slash game that relies very heavily upon combat. This is unfortunately far from being its strongest of assets. It calls upon a blend of gun and sword play with mixed results. On one hand, melee combat is handled in a fairly unique manner, which instead of making use of conventional button combos, utilises flicks of the left analog stick for one-to-one swings. It's a fascinating design choice, but one sadly and strangely never used to its potential, whereas shooting mechanics are distinctly underwhelming due to some loose controls. This is not a hack and slash you could criticise for descending into repetition, purely because it has nothing to descend from. From your very first kill, it has already fallen into a pit of monotony and dreariness, as each level shamelessly pits you against waves upon waves of the same foes. Developer Rebellion at least soothes the pain somewhat by allowing you to purchase upgrades of the experience points you amass from defeating enemies. Before long, you can gain access to a few new attacks and tweaks like the power to emit beams of energy from your sword, which does serve as a limited albeit nice refreshment to an otherwise nightmarishly dull ordeal. Nonetheless, with or without these unlocks, Bryce's moveset still feels restricted and severely repetitious. Even its advertised features of immortality and dismemberment can't save it. Being able to watch your character be torn apart without consequences at first amusing, but it's a novelty that soon wears off. In the latter acts especially, having to constantly reconnect his limbs grows into a deeply tedious and frustrating chore. Every so often, however, NeverDead shines with a rare moment of unfaltering brilliance. It seems whenever it puts its gimmicks to good use is when it becomes actually entertaining and with comedic value as intended. Doing things like removing Bryce's head before tossing it into a ventilation shaft or setting him on fire to use his body as a torch show that somewhere lost in here was a good degree of potential. Its level concluding Zelda-esque boss fights likewise show off some genuinely intelligent and engaging design work. Figuring out their weak points and exploiting them make up some of NeverDead's finest moments. It makes it all the more unfortunate that these are all buried underneath the weight of its otherwise harrowingly repetitive stages. Outside of the single-player experience, NeverDead also offers multiplayer challenges, a selection of competitive and cooperative events played of Xbox Live, such as the usual collectathons and wave attacks. These tasks lift the bland gameplay from the campaign mode, introducing on top of all its flaws even more, like latency problems and various bugs. Even if you are able to work your way around the title's many shortcomings, you'd have a job in your hands justifying a purchase at full price. Lasting appeal is in short supply here, from a story 6 to 7 hours in length, and a poor online effort. As one of the first big releases of 2012 with oodles of promise, NeverDead gets the year off to a disappointing start. Konami have refrained from giving the game much of a push marketing wise, and from the project's outcome, it's not hard to see why.